that we can grow together and reap all the opportunities that are available. We recognize the vital role that entrepreneurs play in stimulating economic growth in a country. In the words of the American author and salesman Zig Ziglar, and I quote, "Success occurs when opportunity meets preparation." I repeat, success occurs when opportunity meets preparation. This conference will showcase a range of investment opportunities available in Jamaica. And NCB stands ready to help investors to be prepared to capitalize on these opportunities and reap massive success. Positive attitudes, positive moves like this conference, and positive policies are necessary ingredients to drive more growth. In business, access to funding is also crucial to growth. It would therefore be remiss of me if I did not point out that the NCB financial ecosystem has a broad range of financing solutions available to both local and foreign investors. But the main thing to take away is NCB's strong support to businesses in both traditional and emerging sectors. Our recent track record has seen financing to over 10 billion for infrastructure and development, with close to 30 billion of funding in the pipeline to the tourism sector. And since March 2020, the bank has facilitated businesses in generating over 100 billion Jamaican dollars of digital sales through our e-commerce platform. All of this, ladies and gentlemen, will help us to build a better Jamaica. NCB wishes for all participants a very productive conference. We are looking forward to seeing how we will work to produce, sell, and finance more. Let's do business, Jamaica. Thank you.
Excellencies, Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, Senator Don Webby, Chairman of JAMPRO, Ms. Diane Edwards, President of JAMPRO, Ms. Patricia Francis, Chair Trade Facilitation Task Force, ladies and gentlemen, friends and participants, allow me to start by thanking JAMPRO and for the kind invitation. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you today, although it would have been better to be with you in Jamaica in person. Permit me also to commend JAMPRO for its leadership in the promotion of business opportunities through trade and investment. JAMPRO's advocacy for reforms aimed at improving the business climate has made Jamaica a standout performer in attracting foreign investment. This conference is yet another example of leadership that seeks to look beyond crisis to new opportunities. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic cannot be overstated. Authorities across Latin America and the Caribbean are seeking to improve access to vaccines and therapeutics, and at the same time dealing with high levels of hesitancy that can dampen economic recovery. While the scars of the health and economic crisis will subside over time, in years to come, this period will be seen as a major inflection point in how we work, buy, sell, invest, and trade across borders. The pandemic has permanently impacted the commercial and trade landscape and has turbocharged the trend towards digitization and decentralization of production in a distributed economy. Production has moved from being modular to dynamic. Work is no longer defined by an office or a factory. A software or biotech engineer in Negril or Bangalore can work for Google as if she was in Silicon Valley. For this trend to be made sustainable, the pipelines of the digital economy must be laid down to empower connectivity. Equally, rules regulating this emerging landscape must be fit for purpose. Reforms that protect the consumer in areas such as data protection must be enacted in a manner that also harnesses the talent and creative potential of, in particular, the youth. Almost 2 years on, looking at the disruptive impacts of the pandemic, one can argue that COVID-19 marked a line between the old and the new economy, between the future of commerce and the past. The seismic movements being witnessed on the global commercial landscape are also opportunities, particularly for developing countries, including small island economies like Jamaica. Digitization has democratized access to commercial and trade opportunities, as small businesses now have access to a global marketplace in ways that would not have been possible in the past. Suppliers of intermediate and finished products can now more easily slot into global value chains through a combination of digital transmissions, electronic payments, and other fintech solutions, e-commerce platforms, and more integrated and robust trade logistics. And in the case of Jamaica, with its outsized exports in cultural services, the move online can help content creators and creatives access new customers and clients on a scale not previously possible. To illustrate the magnitude of the opportunity in the online space, the value of the global e-commerce market in 2018 was estimated at 25.6 trillion US dollars, representing the equivalent of 30% of aggregate global GDP. This figure is certain to have increased substantially since the onset of the pandemic in 2019. To sustainably access these opportunities, technological and regulatory infrastructure must keep pace with increasingly complex technical and regulatory requirements. I'm pleased to say that the WTO is playing its part in this regard. I will address our efforts in support of e-commerce shortly. A recent publication by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development on the impact of the pandemic illustrates the strong uptake of e-commerce across all regions since the pandemic started. For example, the Latin American online marketplace, Mercado Libre, sold twice as many items per day in the second quarter of 2020 compared with the same period the previous year. And the African e-commerce platform Jumia reported a 50% jump in transactions during the first 6 months of 2020. Similar trends have been observed across the Caribbean. There are, however, constraints to harnessing the full potential of the digital and distributed economy. Standards are required and must be applied in areas such as electronic payment infrastructure, financing infrastructure, trade facilitation, and rules on data protection, consumer protection, and cybersecurity. To support Jamaica's efforts aimed at a more competitive climate for investment and trade, the WTO can play a critical role. Your country is an important voice at the WTO, with your mission providing strong leadership through Ambassador Shel Spencer to the ACP group over the past number of months. This offers a unique opportunity for Jamaica to provide leadership at a global level that can help strengthen the multilateral trading system in a manner that is aligned with your development thesis and aspirations. Permit me to offer a few points on how the WTO can support a pro-investment environment. Let's look at trade facilitation. Jamaica was fast to ratify the Trade Facilitation Agreement, TFA, in January 2016 and took commitments in areas that really help in making business and trade more efficient. Some of these measures will improve access to information required by investors in making capital allocation decisions, ensure consistency in the application of formalities, improve cooperation between government agencies, set standards in the operation of customs and other border agencies, and support the automation and digitization of trade transactions through commitments on electronic payments and the establishment of a single window. However, to unlock the full benefits of the agreement, national authorities may want to consider accelerating implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, making full use of the available capacity building support at the same time. Based on notifications received from Jamaica and captured on the WTO Trade Facilitation Database, the current rate of implementation commitments as notified stands at below 40%. I would also encourage you to provide outstanding transparency notifications, as this would give an important signal of your ongoing commitment to implement trade facilitation reforms. The WTO Secretariat stands ready to assist in this regard. Timely implementation of the TFA can support a more efficient climate for doing business, particularly as we exit this crisis and grapple with the disruptive effects of the pandemic on global supply chains. Let me turn to e-commerce, another area where the WTO can support your efforts at improving the competitive environment. This is through support for a future outcome on electronic commerce. At the second WTO Ministerial Conference in May 1998, ministers called for the establishment of a work program on e-commerce. These discussions have been ongoing over the past 20 years, but have not produced meaningful results. In the run-up to the 11th WTO Ministerial Conference in Buenos Aires, a subgroup of WTO members started negotiations on e-commerce in what is termed in Geneva as a joint statement initiative on electronic commerce. These discussions have made substantial progress. Some of the main themes include facilitating electronic transactions, digital trade and logistics, data protection, cybersecurity, market access, and promoting trust in electronic commerce. It is important that the WTO as a whole make progress on some of these issues to ensure that the rules governing the digital economy support the expansion of economic opportunities, particularly for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises or MISMEs. Supporting the e-commerce negotiations can provide an opportunity for you, the business community, to contribute to the formation of the rules that will govern the digital economy. It is important to acknowledge that while trade rules can support a more efficient economy, there are peculiarities uniquely associated with small island developing states, particularly those in the Caribbean and Pacific. These relate to vulnerability to external shocks, particularly the frequent impact of hurricanes and tropical storms. Natural hazards caused by the lottery of geography cannot be changed by trade rules. The WTO can, however, play an important role in helping small island states move from being vulnerable to becoming anti-fragile. To my mind, vulnerability is about exposure to hazards, and resilience a response to risks. However, anti-fragile systems anticipate risk and thrive despite their vulnerability. Policymakers, investors, and traders can ask and respond to a few questions that can help inform the future direction of travel for some economies. How can trends towards nearshoring and shorter supply chains accelerated by the pandemic support inward investment and increase trade opportunities? How can trade and investment stimulate technology transfer in a way that incubates new technologies such as green tech and low carbon technologies? What are the opportunities through climate financing to build redundancies into telecommunications and digital networks? How can engagement at the multilateral level support and empower female and youth entrepreneurship? Trade is critical to addressing the needs of the economies of the future. But equally, trade is vital to solving the current problems of the global commons that confront us today. Yet, trade is often seen as part of the problem, not part of the solution. In a tangible way, trade can be a force for good that can help address the multidimensional vulnerability of many countries, including small island developing states. Trade, but more precisely trade rules, can support the establishment of good regulatory practices and standards. Trade should prepare us for a post-COVID economic recovery. Trade rules must help us prepare for future health crises, and trade rules must help in solving the scourge of the unsustainable depletion of global fish stocks. In closing, while the multilateral trading system cannot solve all the challenges that confront small island developing states, it can and must play an important role in addressing sustainability and the key economic challenges of our time. I thank you.
It is my pleasure to welcome all attendees viewing the Explore Do Business Jamaica Virtual Investment Conference. Before COVID-19, Jamaica's macroeconomic program was on a positive trajectory, with all indicators positive. Unemployment down to 7.2%, inflation down to low single digits, and we achieved 19 consecutive quarters of positive GDP growth. As you would know, the COVID-19 pandemic led to the deceleration of economic activity internationally, the disruption of movement of goods and people, and has had a negative impact on the well-being of everyone. But in all of this, there is the resilience of the human spirit. We all want to protect what we have, our achievements thus far, and the gains we have made in the economy. On 2030, which is our national development plan to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, do business, and of course, retire in paradise. Along with improvements in Jamaica's macroeconomic indicators, we also saw expansion in sectors like tourism, logistics, and outsourcing. Jamaica remains one of the more open, liberal economies in the world. We welcome investment and already of foreign investors in areas such as LNG, bauxite, hotels, logistics, airport and seaport infrastructure, renewable energy, and now agribusiness. We had achieved a ranking of number 4 in Latin America and the Caribbean for the efficiency and effectiveness of our public-private partnership program. Since the start of the pandemic, Jamaica acted quickly to craft an approach to safeguard both lives and livelihoods. As a small open economy, an approach that required keeping our borders closed for a lengthy period was not sustainable. We closed our borders for a brief period at the beginning of the pandemic, but we used the time to craft a set of measures that would enable us to safely operate some of our key sectors, including tourism. We established the Tourism Resilience Corridor with COVID-19 resilience certification required for entities to operate. Our comprehensive set of protocols was among the first in the world, and they were endorsed by the World Travel and Tourism Council in June 2020. We also acted immediately to strengthen the social safety net. We outlined a social support program of over US $168 million to cushion the impact of COVID-19 on the most vulnerable. This is the largest stimulus package in Jamaica's history. We reduced the general consumption tax and value-added tax to put US $94 million back into the hands of our consumers. We targeted Jamaica's key industries by reducing regulatory fees to increase production and encourage the growing of food locally. We made the necessary decisions to secure the rapidly growing outsourcing industry and to minimize disruptions in services by enabling a work-from-home solution. These initiatives helped Jamaica to maintain its economic security during this period and to create opportunities for further advancement. It is important to note that the goal for these and other interventions was not simply to react to the crisis in the hope of returning Jamaica to its pre-pandemic performance. It was to put Jamaica in a position to reorganize and reconfigure our economy to recover from the pandemic stronger than we went into it. To do this, during the pandemic, a delicate balance must be maintained between protecting the health of our people and at the same time keeping economic activity going. Through resilience and a full commitment to innovation and creativity, we are executing strategies to boost the economy. We are currently seeing the impact of some of these initiatives. In a recent report by the Planning Institute of Jamaica, it was noted that more than half of the jobs lost in 2020 were recovered. The outsourcing sector now has 43,000 persons employed, a 20% growth since the decline that occurred in 2020. The latest projection is for an expansion of 12.9% in GDP in this year's second quarter. The services industry grew by 14%, and the goods producing industry grew by 7.8%. Our fiscal accounts also outperformed estimates, resulting in a fiscal surplus of more than $64 million. And the Bank of Jamaica anticipates that the country's growth for the fiscal year 2021-2022 will be higher than expected. These are all positive indicators for Jamaica, and we expect to see more favorable signs that the economy is on the way to full recovery and aggressive growth. What the pandemic has made clear is that the world cannot operate as if it's business as usual. We must change our way of doing business, and we must continue to prepare our people and entrepreneurs so that they can successfully access wealth creation opportunities. We are already on this path. Jamaica has launched the Global Services Sector Project to certify persons and give them the technical and professional skills needed to work in digital services. The government's training agency, the Heart NSTA Trust, is also executing programs to equip Jamaicans with skills in coding and other technology-related areas. These programs include the Amber Heart NSTA Coding Academy, which aims to train thousands of people and will serve as a tool to catalyze a digital transformation in Jamaica. To further support our goal of becoming a digital society, the Development Bank of Jamaica has launched the Go Digital Technical Assistance Program for MSMEs. This will promote the adoption of cutting-edge technology in practices in business, moving away from manual product and service delivery processes. The National Broadband Initiative is also a part of our digital transformation efforts. This program will help Jamaica to achieve universal access to the broadband network, improve quality, coverage, and affordability of key services, promote entrepreneurship and local content creation, boost ICT exports, and increase competitiveness. Jamaica has launched national strategies to develop and strengthen manufacturing and agriculture by integrating more climate-smart technologies, which will be critical to boosting our economic growth. On the energy front, the government will implement the Integrated Resource Plan, which will add around 1,600 megawatts of electricity generation capacity over the next 20 years to expand the island's energy resources. This will encourage reduced energy prices, support growth in industries, and decrease the vulnerability of the energy sector to external shocks. The island also continues its agenda to improve the ease of doing business and the overall business environment through various reforms which are already underway. With the combination of a stronger and more diverse economy, innovation, and empowered populace, and a good business environment and ecosystem, Jamaica will thrive. There are still challenges ahead, but we are on a good course to achieving Vision 2030. Jamaica is on its way to having a healthy, educated population, strong economic infrastructure, and a technology-enabled society supported by investment, as well as public and private partnerships. We believe that you can be a part of our journey. At this conference, you will learn about the industries and sectors on a growth path and how you can invest and profit with us. You will hear the stories of successful Jamaican businesses, our homegrown multinationals, and you will hear the stories of the leaders who created them. This is your chance to get an understanding of Jamaica's economy and the investment opportunities that exist. Whether you are a Jamaican or an international viewer, you can participate in building Jamaica. There is a place for you here, and I welcome you to explore, find your area of interest, and join us on the road to Vision 2030. Let's do business.
Hello and welcome to this fireside chat with the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, which will focus on Vision 2030, the country's national development plan. I'm Courtney Fingar, Editor-in-Chief of Investment Monitor, a digital publication covering foreign direct investment. Welcome to you, Honorable Prime Minister. I'm delighted to get the opportunity to hear the plans that you have in store.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Now, of course, when it comes to foreign direct investment, it's an understatement to say it's been a challenging time for economies worldwide, with large declines in global FDI flows over the past year and a half. And as we look to recovery, governments will need to overcome a lot of challenges in order to maintain or improve their competitiveness and to continue to attract the necessary levels of foreign investment in order to develop their economies. And as one of the most important economies and investment hubs in the region, Jamaica's path to recovery will be closely watched. And looking at the numbers, the Jamaican economy appears to be already down that path to recovery, with economic indicators showing positive trends. Honorable Prime Minister, how confident are you of maintaining this positive momentum, and what in your mind could potentially threaten the recovery?
Well, we have a very high level of confidence that we have the necessary economic framework in place, particularly around our fiscal policy and our monetary policies. And our growth policies are also evolving very strongly. So I think we have the foundational things correct. And during the pandemic, we would have demonstrated that the dividends have paid off from our good fiscal management, controlling our expenditure, making sure we're spending on the right things, managing our revenues and protecting our revenues, and ensuring that even in the pandemic, we did not engage unnecessarily in borrowing, and keeping buffers in place for shocks, which we have been doing for the last decade. And that has served us well, served us excellently, actually. So from a fiscal standpoint, I think we are prepared for shocks. And indeed, we were prepared for this shock, even though it was unforeseen. And that has aided us in a faster and stronger recovery. But more than that, we have also taken on the effectiveness of our public administration, deep institutional reforms. And those have also been paying dividends, particularly as it relates to the ease of government to business transactions, and with reforming our business processes and ensuring that our approvals and permitting processes are easier to navigate. So we have been making progress on the ease of doing business indices. So in general, we're confident that our recovery will be V-shaped, or more like a tick, meaning higher recovery than before, much faster recovery. What could be the threats? There are several. One would be immediately for Jamaica, how quickly we get our population fully vaccinated so that we can exit the pandemic quickly. But the emergence of new variants that could drag out the pandemic is an issue for us, and that's the immediate threat. The other threat would be how fast the world itself recovers, particularly from the disruption in supply chains. And that is something that we are watching closely, because for Jamaica, it has meant an increase in our prices. And that is something that even with our good fiscal management, you're seeing that creeping into our economic context there. So we have to be very careful of that. And we are very hopeful still that the world will get back to some form of normalcy in this area very quickly. So we're watching what's happening with our main traders, our main trading partners. We're seeing their growth figures showing signs of recovery, but slowly. So that could have an impact on us. One other area that would definitely have an impact on our recovery is energy. And we're seeing the increases in oil prices globally. We have started long before this, however, to diversify our energy supplies from just oil to a portfolio of energy products. So we do now have natural gas as a significant part of our energy supply, and we have made strides, significant strides in renewables, in particular solar and wind, and we will be expanding that as we move into the next 5 years. So we should be able to withstand energy shocks, but if the shocks are, as they have been in the past, significant increases, they could have a devastating impact on our recovery.
And thinking further about FDI, at a time when there were fewer investment projects on offer, it was more important than ever to retain existing investors and to support them during the time of crisis. Can you tell us a little bit about what the government of Jamaica did to handhold a little bit the foreign investors operating there, and whether you introduced any new incentives or other means of support?
What we found from our investors is that whilst there were requests for new incentives, but given the fiscal framework to which we're committed, we didn't go down that path. But what we found, and it's very interesting, is that the investors wanted us to give them the support that they would need to utilize whatever downtime that was created by the pandemic to advance the development of their projects. So they didn't lose interest in the investment. The downtime that was created by the pandemic, they wanted to be able to use that in strategic ways. So, for example, increasing the time for permitting and approvals for construction projects. We sought to get those done during the downtime so that when they're ready to build, that's all in place. We used it effectively to put in new legislation to create new opportunities for existing investors and new investors to come. So, for example, we put in a new legislation to provide for gaming and casinos. And that has created a whole new opportunity for existing investors in our tourism sector that will see the introduction of gaming and casinos and large-scale resort developments as now will become a part of our tourism product, and a great opportunity for existing investors and indeed new investors who want to come. For the business process outsourcing industry, we found that the support that we gave to them in putting in place infection control measures to allow them to be able to function during the pandemic, allowing them to be able to work from home, and the necessary incentives that have gone with that. They were very appreciative of that. And in fact, the industry grew by 15%. Employment in the industry grew by 15% during the pandemic, which is an amazing thing. So we found innovative ways of supporting our investors, making the investments still viable, and the ability for our investors to pursue them. It was greatly supported by the government during the period of the pandemic.
Well, you mentioned tourism, and of course that's an important industry for the country, but I also know that you've made big efforts towards economic diversification. Did those efforts maybe pay dividends and help you during a time when the global tourism industry essentially was getting hammered by the pandemic?
So Jamaica is a country, as you would know, that's reliant on tourism. And tourism is a major part of our economy. But the service sector is much larger than tourism, and the service sector itself did fairly well. The strategy of the government was to support the re-emergence of the sector, even in the pandemic, by creating a resilient zone, which we call the resilient corridor. And the nature of our tourism is such that it was quite amenable to the declaration of a zone in which business could continue close to normal with the infection control and prevention measures. And that's what we created. We created a resilient corridor, and that allowed tourism to continue pretty much as normal, except for the masks and other things that we have instituted. And it has worked. Our tourism is recovering, and we are now having cruise ships coming back. And though we are not yet to our pre-COVID numbers, we're getting there rapidly.
Well, and in terms of leading a country during a time of such an enormous crisis, when you're able to look back on this time, do you think there are lessons that could be derived from how Jamaica handled the crisis?
Many lessons, but the first one is to be prepared. And that preparation means that in times of plenty, put aside for times when you don't have enough. So we have been creating fiscal buffers, and that's an important part of our fiscal management. And there is a dividend from good fiscal management, and you will reap that dividend in times of difficulty. And we have been reaping that difficulty, that benefit rather, in this difficult time. The other lesson is that in a time of crisis, you want to be able to guarantee stability. You want to be able to say to your foreign investors, the fundamentals of the country is strong. And those fundamentals are sometimes very much intertwined with the social issues, because political and social instability does have an impact on investor confidence. And what we have been able to show in Jamaica is that we have been able to manage the pandemic by addressing the social issues with rapid responses in our care programs to show our vulnerable and our indigent and our poor that we are able to support them even in a time of crisis. And that would have lent itself to a high degree of social stability and political stability. And that's very, very important. Jamaica has remained very stable, and investors have felt very comfortable, even during the very disruptive time of the pandemic.
Well, there will be inevitably executives of multinational companies, investors, and potential future investors perhaps watching this broadcast. What is your message to them?
Well, firstly, Jamaica is very much wide open for investment. And we invite you to come to Jamaica, to take an interest in Jamaica. We are a country of great opportunities in the service industries, in tourism, phenomenal opportunities in tourism, potential in energy, particularly renewable energies here for investment. But we've always said to our investors that Jamaica's advantage is in its God-given location. In the Caribbean, we're close to everywhere, and we're central. So you would want to position yourself here if you want to have regional reach and indeed global reach. So Jamaica is well placed. And so this is a good place to locate yourself for business.
And thinking further into the future, we mentioned at the start about Vision 2030 and your national development plan. For those who wouldn't necessarily be familiar with it, what is the plan? What is its top priorities, and where is it meant to take Jamaica in 2030?
Well, in short, the objective of the plan is to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise your families, do business, and I've added to that, retire in paradise. So that's what we want to create. That's the Jamaican dream, and we're working to turn that dream into a vision. And so obviously a very important part of that is the development of our human resources to ensure that our citizens are pro-social, that they are pro-growth, that they can function in the fourth industrial revolution, that they are creative and productive. And we are therefore reforming our education system to put us in a strong place for that. And so we've just recently launched a commission to review our education system. That's just one important part of human resource development. The other part, obviously, is to create a business environment where investors can find it easy to do business, to secure their profits when they make them here, and to consider this a place to reinvest and stay. And we have been working on our institutions to make them more investor friendly, to make them robust, to manage issues that could affect investors. So the efficiency of the public sector, that's one big issue for us that we're working on. Managing issues of corruption to make sure that that does not impact our foreign investors, and security to make sure that this is a place where people can feel safe to do business and to live.
Well, you've mentioned the strides that have been made in terms of improving business friendliness. Are there still things on your to-do list in that regard? Any future reforms that you would like to put through that you think would further enhance Jamaica's attractiveness as an investment destination?
Well, one major area that we are working on as part of that Vision 2030 is to turn Jamaica into a digital society, which is to mainstream the information technology and digitalization into the business process of government. That is being pursued. And in fact, the pandemic has given us the perfect opportunity to build back better and stronger in this regard. So the process of, for example, putting in place a national system of identification, the digitalization of records, the re-engineering of our business processes to make them more virtual, all of that has taken on new energy, new urgency, and is moving very quickly apace.
Now, one of the outcomes of the pandemic is it's causing a reordering of supply chains. And I know that establishing Jamaica as a logistics hub is part of, I guess, its FDI strategy. Do you think there are general changes in global supply chains or trade patterns that you can benefit from?
I think the pandemic has demonstrated that there is a kind of over-reliance on one center as the global factory, and that there has to be a diversification, if you will, and that there has to be even a focus on nearshore, offshore, if you want to put it in that way. And therefore, you're going to see an inevitable shift of factories and the supply chain to areas which are closer to the large consumption markets. And we are positioning ourselves for that. We have established a special economic zone authority, which has been working assiduously throughout the pandemic to attract new business, and there are significant interests. We will be building out a zone. The government will be leading that initiative to bring in new business into the logistics area. And we're expecting that in the next decade, we're going to see a major shift in the supply chains that will be looking more nearshore for offshore activities.
When it comes to activities such as manufacturing, production, and for example, the agribusiness industry, are you happy with where Jamaica is in the global value chain, or do you see opportunities to do even higher value add activities?
I think we have not fully exploited all the advantages we have in agriculture. And there is now a great recognition that there is significant value there. And what we're seeing in the recent years is that capital is taking an interest in agriculture. So agriculture is now being seen as a business enterprise like any other business enterprise in Jamaica. And that's a fundamental change. Much of this is happening locally, but I suspect that as the local base in agriculture, business in agriculture increases, you're going to see even foreign investors coming to invest in agriculture. Jamaica has a niche position in certain products that it has not fully exploited. Coffee would be one that comes readily to mind. Our Blue Mountain coffee is, I think, the best coffee in the world. And I don't think my own views on it would be exceptional in that regard. I think it is the best coffee in the world. Our Sea Island cotton is regarded as some of the best cotton fiber that you can have in the world. And we have numerous other opportunities in orchard crops, in seafood, such as conch and lobster. We have opportunities that we simply have not fully exploited, but we are now seeing the opportunities being taken up.
And when you survey the neighborhood in which Jamaica is located, do you see other Caribbean countries in terms of FDI as competitors, or do you think that they're complementary offerings and ways that you could collaborate?
I think they're both. You'd be naive not to see your neighbors as competitors, but a competitive strategy could be to see where there are complementarities and work in that regard. So we have sought to explore where things are beneficial because they work in complement with each other. So, for example, we have pursued a multi-destination tourism strategy because if you go to an island that is 100 miles from here, it could quite easily be considered a day trip to come to Jamaica. So we benefit. So there are strategies to pursue where things are advantageous because they complement each other. But nevertheless, Jamaica always has to look out for its own best interest.
Are you seeing any changes or in fact, even pursuing any changes in Jamaica's main global economic and trade partners?
We want to trade with everyone. We try to be friends with everyone, and that's Jamaica's kind of diplomatic mantra. We don't want to be boxed in, so we seek to have global connections. Where the opportunities present, that is where we will be focusing attention.
One of the other major global trends is an increasing focus on ESG, so environmental, social, and governance factors, and sustainability. How important is this to you, and are these key considerations for you as you shape the country's development strategy?
Well, the best example of that is the mainstreaming of climate change issues into how we manage our economy and society. So we don't make a separation between our fiscal policy and our policy for climate change, for example. In other words, we're using our fiscal policy as a means of combating climate change by making ourselves financially strong so that we can deal with the effects of climate change, which for us, the main impacts so far would be in hurricanes and the coastal retreats that we're seeing in our lands. So we have put aside resources for that. We have been hit by several storms during this hurricane season, but we have not had to borrow to recover from them because we managed to deal with them from resources we have reserved to treat with them. And recently, we have put up a catastrophe bond with the support of the World Bank, one of the first in the region. So we are using mainstreaming these, fiscal policy, our climate change policy. So, considering our environment, social, and governance issues are very important for us.
And on the subject of climate change, do you feel that island nations like Jamaica have a special role to play, and I guess a special voice in it, given that the consequences would be so enormous to island countries?
I think more and more small island developing states and the developing world in general recognizes the importance of managing carbon and the impact that that could have on the future trajectory of development for these countries. So we do have an important role to play to ensure that there is equity in future development and to get the emitters and those who have benefited from the carbon emitted in the past to take some responsibility for it and to place at the disposal of the developing world the resources to be able to mitigate and to adapt to climate change.
And what do you see as other increasingly pressing concerns or priorities of yours as a national leader?
Well, in Jamaica, we have several pressing concerns. Number one right now would be to end the pandemic, and you know, the pandemic is moving into a different stage. So here in Jamaica, we have said to our population, we must learn to live with the coronavirus, and that means that we will have to transition from treating it as a project to treating it as a disease that has to be contended with like all other diseases. So that would be, you know, the main pressing concern. Another important concern in the fulfillment of our 2030 vision is to ensure that we have the human resources that can literally manage that transformation. So we have to get our labor force up to speed. We have to get our labor force competitive, and therefore focusing on education reform is absolutely critical for us.
Okay, and as we get ready to wrap up, we did discuss a little bit the longer term future with eyes to 2030, but in the shorter term, what is your expectation for the next last few months of this year and going into next year in terms of the economic prospects, FDI trends, and your general recovery?
So what we've seen so far would suggest that we have sufficient investments in the pipeline to sustain growth into next year. And I think that's the general agreement of persons who are examining our economic performance. The view is that we could have about 4% growth, 3.7% growth this year, and then the following year we could go as high as 5%. So in the immediate future now, we are very optimistic and confident that there will be economic growth. The challenge for us now is to create momentum. So to take that growth and use it as a launching pad for further growth at even greater pace than before.
Great. Well, we'll certainly be watching very closely how you get on with all the ambitious plans you have, and as you pursue recovery and continue to attract FDI to Jamaica. Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, thank you very much for your time and sharing your insights. And thank you to our viewers and attendees for tuning in.
Thank you for having me, Courtney.
Okay, welcome to the panel discussion on Jamaica's economic recovery, Jamaica Rising and Building Back Better, as part of the Explore, Do Business Jamaica Investment Conference. I am Keith Collister, Executive Chairman of the ATL Pension Fund. Joining me on this discussion as we explore investing in Jamaica's agro-industry is Mr. John Mahfood, who is President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association and Managing Director of Jamaica Teas Limited. John comes to the table as an experienced business leader with a wealth of knowledge on local and international retail and trade, mergers and expansion. He also has several years of service on the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association's Board of Directors through his appointments as Vice President and Committee Co-Chair for Membership and MSME Program Development. We are also joined by Wayne Henry, who is Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica. Mr. Henry, or Dr. Henry, has a PhD. He spent 5 years as Vice President of Government Affairs of the Scotiabank Group and was formerly a Chief Technical Advisor to the Minister of Finance, as well as Special Advisor to the Minister of Agriculture. He had also previously worked as the World Bank representative in Jamaica and spent several years as a lecturer in economics at the University of the West Indies. So we have two experts today joining us. On that note, I just want to start with the overview of the session. Jamaica experienced record and consistent economic growth rates pre-COVID in certain sectors. The recovery effort by the government has been extensive, in some regards positive, and there is currently a recovery going on from the pandemic, particularly in outsourcing, manufacturing, agriculture, and the creative industries. In fact, Jamaica showed quite a strong growth rate in the second quarter of 12.9%, which included recovery in both services and goods producing industries. The services sector, which includes hotels, increased by 14%, and the goods producing sector, which dominated by construction, agriculture, and manufacturing, grew by 7.8%. As a result of this, unemployment has fallen significantly to 8.5% from 12.6% last July. In this session, we seek to give some insight into the past performance of the economy, the current economic situation, and provide a bold vision for Jamaica's future. So at this point, I would like to ask Dr. Wayne Henry to follow up on that brief overview of the Jamaican economy, to give us a sort of update of where we've been coming from and where we are now, and some thoughts on the future as it is the Planning Institute of Jamaica that he represents.
So thank you very much for having me, Keith, and hello everyone. And so Jamaica has made tremendous strides pre-COVID in macroeconomic stability over the last 10 years. In improving the macroeconomic environment. These improvements were underpinned, we think, by an aggressive fiscal consolidation program, supported by some of our multilateral partners, and underpinned by legislative reforms to secure the benefits of the program. And so, for example, we had fiscal rules established that led to a reduction in Jamaica's debt to GDP from some 135% in 2013 to just under 95% in 2019. The improved fiscal performance facilitated up to 2019 7 consecutive years of economic growth, 8 consecutive years of increased employment, and 9 consecutive years of single-digit inflation. And so these gains place Jamaica in a better position to address the health and economic shocks caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the public health and safety measures implemented to stem its spread. And so while looking at the impact of the pandemic, most macroeconomic conditions would have worsened. Like many other countries globally, Jamaica was hard hit by the pandemic. And for the calendar year 2020, real GDP contracted by 7.5%, though contraction continued into the first quarter of 2021. And we had for fiscal year 2020-2021 a contraction in the economy of some 11%. But then for the April to June 2021 quarter, the effects of the fiscal and monetary measures implemented to cushion the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were beginning to see positive signs in terms of payoff. And so the country recorded economic growth of 14.2% following that June quarter. And it is poised to grow for the remainder of 2021. And so the relatively strong and fast return to growth is mainly attributed to the reforms that started within the last decade for Jamaica and placed the country on a sound footing as we seek to build forward stronger and better. And while the situation remains fluid, we are poised to return to pre-COVID levels of GDP by fiscal year 2023-24 and pre-COVID levels of employment by fiscal year 2022-2023. All right, thank you.
Okay, John, well, turning to you, maybe you can give us a quick overview of how you see things at a more micro level in terms of growth and in employment in Jamaica at this time.
Thank you. I think people, first of all, would know that Jamaica has a relatively low vaccination rate. Yet, and I think it's about 20% at this time, with 13% fully vaccinated. However, the government has done a very good job of managing the infection rate. They have put in controls that a number of other countries don't have, including the US, of mask wearing, social distancing, and this has helped to temper the spread of the virus. So even with the low vaccination rate, Jamaica has been spared a lot of the problems associated with COVID. And during the past year and 9 months or so, we have had some surges, but through controls, including curfews and certain lockdown days, we have managed that process, which has allowed the country to return to a form of normality. Also, Jamaica is not overly dependent on one industry. We are obviously a tourist destination, and that took a very hard hit due to COVID, with virtually all hotels closed. But at the same time, it also has the pillars of agriculture and manufacturing and call centers and a very strong remittance base. And in fact, the remittance base increased to compensate somewhat for the downturn in tourism. And of course, we also have a very strong US dollar, what we call it, the cushion there, the reserves of almost 4 billion. So we have been able to pull through this problem of COVID, and as Dr. Henry said, we are now beginning to see the benefits in terms of growth and so on, not yet to the pre-COVID level. But what has happened as of 2021 and late 2020 is because of the good fiscal management. There is a lot of money in the hands of investors that are looking still for opportunities to invest. And so we have had a very, very strong stock market with a lot of IPOs going on in 2021. We have had a very strong construction industry as people look to put their funds in other areas because bank interest rates are very low. And of course, the call centers have continued to do well. So going back to the construction industry, we also have Jamaicans living abroad looking for an opportunity to invest in their money. And a lot of our construction boom has been facilitated by inputs, by funds coming in from Jamaicans living abroad. This has allowed the manufacturing sector to continue and to build, and we can talk about some of the areas where we have seen opportunities, including increasing in exports. So to summarize, because of the fiscal prudence that Dr. Henry talked about for the past decade, and also the good controls concerning the management of the COVID in Jamaica and the healthy economic environment that exists, we are seeing Jamaica come out of the pre-pandemic level, and it looks like this will continue well into next year.
Okay, thank you very much, John, for that those opening remarks. Wayne, I'll come back to you. Can you give us a sort of overview of, for example, things such as the current account deficit and the performance of the tourism industry, which has recovered, and when do you see us returning to full employment and GDP? So the elimination of the output gap, as you would call it.
So thank you for that, Keith. So to be clear, when you say full employment, I've said, and we're careful to quantify, pre-COVID, we saw record unemployment, low unemployment in Jamaica, and record, job creation levels, 2015, 16, 17, 18. So we saw some impressive numbers there. We would speak of returning to those pre-COVID levels, and particularly we said the pre-COVID level of employment by fiscal year next year, fiscal year 2022-23, and for pre-COVID GDP, real GDP levels at fiscal year 23-24. Full employment now as a paradigm, we would have to have further analysis. For persons, there was some discussion around when we had the record low unemployment levels, were we at full employment? And we say, well, to speak to full employment, speaking to, and I speak to an output gap, you're having to make assumptions about capacity in the economy, what levels of utilization are, what is the potential of the economy, potential GDP. So I'm just wanting to make clear that we were speaking now to pre-COVID, returning to pre-COVID levels of GDP and employment. And it's a useful assessment because when we look at comparing to another crisis, for example, the 2008 crisis, the economic and financial crisis of 2008 to about 2012, we saw at that time that it took Jamaica maybe 8 years to return to pre-crisis levels of output of employment, and maybe closer to maybe from 2018, maybe almost 10 years to return to pre-COVID, pre-crisis levels of GDP. So the shorter time, and in comparing crises, that you say in 2008, we lost some 91,000 jobs. over that 4-year period as the global economy went into recession. In COVID over last year, first case in March 2020 for Jamaica, in that maybe a 4-month period, we lost 135,000 jobs. So for us to recover to the pre-COVID level of employment in a much shorter time compared to a previous crisis says that the economy was in a better place. So the engine, this vehicle of the economy was in better shape, right? So just to speak to those issues and those areas that would lead recovery, and we've seen leading recovery, would be those sectors that were most severely impacted. So largely tourism, construction, other services that spoke to entertainment, restaurants, the construction industry, transport, storage, and communication. Those areas that would have been severely impacted by the limited people movement, the closure of borders, and that those industries are leading and have been showing some very impressive numbers in leading the recovery.
Okay, well, I'll come back to John. Are there any particular sectors that you like particularly to invest in now, whether they are, and particularly real sectors such as manufacturing or agriculture or logistics? How do you see things? And perhaps you could expand a bit on also the development of the stock market here, which I know you're an investor in. And, you know.
Yes, thanks, Keith. You know, Jamaica, like every other country, has been impacted by the turmoil in the shipping industry and the shortages that have been caused by the surge in demand by consumers in the US. And this has manifested itself in significant increases in lumber prices, in steel prices, in cardboard and paper, and in raw materials. In addition to that, it has impacted us in terms of shipping costs. Typically, a container would cost $2,000 from the Far East a year and a half ago. That's now roughly to Jamaica about $12,000 to $13,000. The combination of those two things have caused a spike in our inflation rate, again, like many other countries. The couple of areas of differences, though, is that we are a central port for shipping, and for that reason and others, our shipping costs, the increase in our shipping costs is far less than the increase in shipping costs to the east coast of the US. So we are seeing 20-foot containers costing up to 20,000 US to the US and Florida. And that difference between the shipping cost to Jamaica and the difference in that and the US shipping costs, I don't know how long it will last, but that $7,000 or $8,000 difference has created a window for Jamaican manufacturers to export products that prior to this might not have been competitive compared to the Far East manufacturers. And we are seeing some examples of that with furniture companies, bedding companies now exporting their goods to Trinidad and Barbados. Whereas, they couldn't compete in the past. We ourselves, as a company, are moving some manufacturing that we used to do in the Far East. We're bringing it back to Jamaica and exporting to the US. So we don't know exactly how long this situation is going to last, but for the time being, the companies in Jamaica are gearing up to take advantage of it. And I believe as they do that, it will have a longer lasting impact in terms of the efficiency of the manufacturers. And we have also seen as any investor in the stock market in Jamaica will see, is that even though the pandemic has caused a cut in consumer demand and in the hotel sectors, companies have reinvested in technology and increased efficiency, and now are making more profits from less income. And this will bode well for the future when the economy slowly starts to build up. So I like manufacturing as a good area for investment. And we have to remember that the proximity to the US makes it, with freight rates from Jamaica to the US, $1,500 makes it an attractive area now compared to the Far East. We are seeing other areas, Keith. We're seeing a growth in the BPO sector, significant growth. Again, because of the nearness of Jamaica to the main markets, to the English-speaking population, to the relatively good education, creates an opportunity for that BPO sector. And we want to start to think about areas like the cannabis and the marijuana as opportunities, because it may be a couple of years, but slowly I think the US federal government is going to start to look at this area as more and more states open up. And Jamaica is beginning to expand its capacity in that industry. And I think finally the housing sector, which I talked about, and which is still having a strong demand from overseas and local in the price range of under 30 million Jamaican, which is how much, Keith, in US? That's about what, 400,000, somewhere in that region. That price range of construction still is very attractive in Jamaica. And I think those are some of the opportunities that I see moving forward, and that will continue to be good areas for investment.
Okay, thank you, John. Coming back to you, Wayne. You just want to give us a little bit of an overview on the current account deficit and balance of payments.
Okay, so we've seen, and you'll hear, I think, on the current account side, balance of payments, some of what BOJ would be monitoring and reporting on quite frequently. Some, with the inflation targeting regime, there have been, methods and I think just greater focus on this overall platform of stability and ensuring that is maintained in the monetary sector. We and as John spoke about, those confidence in the economy, I think the overall fiscal on the fiscal side, the macro stability has been an key underpinning, I think, for what we've seen of the country going into the pandemic, and even what we think will underpin a lot of the recovery going forward. So the point, Keith, is that policy matters. We've seen the government engaging in prudent fiscal management before the pandemic, and I think with some wise choices that allowed a buffer of resources. You think that would have enabled some of the responses during the time of the pandemic. So when we think of the CARE program, the COVID allocation of resources for employees, you think of the SERVE, the Social and Economic Recovery and Vaccine Program for Jamaica, those programs that were geared towards mitigating the impact of the pandemic on persons, preserving livelihoods, trying to shelter and provide for the more vulnerable. I think that came about as a result of a number of measures that led to general macroeconomic stability and some overall fiscal prudence. And I think it's very important. And those will serve as key underpinnings going forward for a lot of what the private sector would need to thrive in terms of stability and predictability. And I think because of what we say policy matters, and where Jamaica is in a much better place in terms of macroeconomic stability, in terms of a stronger place in terms of fiscal stability and the fiscal prudence that has underpinned, enshrined by legislative underpinnings that in terms of fiscal rules and fiscal laws that and now to be established a fiscal council that sort of ensures greater predictability and stability in the fiscal and overall macroeconomic framework. And that is, I think, coupled with a lot of what we're seeing from the central bank side in terms of in their more in a more, I think, transparent independent framework, but no less committed to the same stability underpinned by an inflation targeting regime, where they are very much in a systematic way reporting on interventions on the management of rates and interventions into the economy by the central bank. So I think overall messaging, Keith, is that you have a more predictable and stable framework going forward.
Yes, well, isn't it true, Wayne, that we have we're targeting a balanced budget this year, and we have a very low current account deficit. So that's where we've got for an emerging market, we have an unusually strong macroeconomic framework. All right, John. So going back to you, you were a member of the recent business and consumer confidence indexes of the Chamber of Commerce. You were a speaker. Obviously, it was down slightly. Primarily, it seems due to the rise of the Delta variant over the period. But how do you see things now that we seem to be moving into a period where the Delta is and COVID is coming back under control, and we've moved away from the full lockdowns, and now we're open 7 days a week again. How do you see business activity, particularly over this coming quarter?
The fact is that like virtually every other country, where business people and consumers are faced with this long period of restrictions caused by COVID, and for the likelihood that it is going to continue for the foreseeable future, it does create some apprehension in terms of business folks. And on top of that, Jamaica started to see, probably a little later than other countries, started to see the impact of the inflation caused by the matters that I mentioned before. So, I think that was what was really driving the downturn, is the number one, the continuation of restrictions and the high inflation rate. It is my sense, and Dr. Henry can say if he thinks it's true. It is my sense that the inflation push that we are feeling will stabilize sometime next year, and we will get back within the low single digits that we had been anticipating. And the other thing that we have to look forward to is the resumption of a very strong tourism industry for the coming winter tourist season, where the hotels are reporting very strong bookings. And of course, we are also getting additional passenger service. So I think the tourism industry is coming back because our tourists, the persons from the US, the UK, have a high rate of vaccination. They feel safer traveling. They feel safer traveling to this side of the world, which is very peaceful. And our tourism workers are very highly vaccinated as opposed to the regular population. So the tourist industry is going to grow, I believe, not just through the tourism arrivals, but through the sector itself. And investment in the sector creates opportunities. And Jampro probably will talk more about some significant investments in that area. My reading from all of that is that going into 2022, 2023, we are going to see a resumption of the economy continuing to grow at a rapid rate. And as Dr. Henry indicated, sometime around early 2023, we're going to get back the levels of employment that we had previously. And the economy and the manufacturing sector, because they are now operating at an increased level of efficiency, will be more profitable, and that will continue to grow the Jamaican economy and provide opportunities for investment.
If I can, Keith, I just to support John's assessment on inflation, that yes, we believe that the increased levels you're seeing now would be temporal, relatively short-lived, in keeping with the BOJ's own assessment that their projections remain in the 4 to 6% range, even as they were explaining that increase that we are seeing now, that would be tempered to return back within that sort of what they call their target range, their program range over the medium term. So they're supporting what John is saying.
Okay, well, I was going to come back to you anyway. Maybe you can expand on the other areas of the we're supposed to talk a little bit about agriculture, and I know that's a speciality of yours, and also agricultural prices were a part of the recent rise in inflation. So perhaps you can give us your thoughts on agriculture at this time.
Well. So thank you for that, Keith. When the pandemic hit Jamaica in March 2020, and we began to move into this era of crisis, agriculture was one of those industries that continued in those initial stages to perform relatively well, because while tourism was very hard hit initially, particularly in the first quarters of the crisis last year, that June quarter, because we had some shutdown of the economy in April, May. While tourism was hard hit, a lot of the ramping up of agricultural produce that would feed into the tourism sector. As tourism was hard hit, that was now diverted to the local market. And so I think that the government and private sector partners sort of scrambled to ensure farmers markets and a lot of the produce that was already in the field coming out, anticipating normal demand in tourism. As demand in tourism fell, a lot of that agricultural produce, thankfully, were consumed by our local consumers. And so you saw agriculture doing well in those initial stages. But unfortunately, as we got into August, September, we saw some drought conditions beginning to impact. And so agriculture typically has been vulnerable in terms of, in the sense of climate impacts. The good news is that there's been a steady build out in agriculture of infusing greater what we call climate smart agricultural practices. There have been general build out in productive capacity with the assistance of the Ministry of Agriculture, rather different ones to help farmers in specific areas. We've tried, the sort of satellite approaches where we'll have clusters around, the mother farm concept that you would see in broiler meat production and in the chicken farming, and where small farmers could feed into that mechanism. We've seen storage facilities being put in place. We have ongoing now in the western end of the island, irrigation facilities, and also in Clarendon, South Clarendon, some irrigation facilities that's designed to help to improve the supply side in terms of the agriculture on the overall production equation. So we are seeing a general build out in the sector, which is promising. So as we are seeing where drought conditions would historically impact the sector, we are seeing measures to mitigate that impact through the increased implementation of irrigation facilities. And so that's very important. And then, of course, the ongoing program of establishing greater linkages with the tourism sector, with linkages with tourism and agriculture and manufacturing. I think that is continuing to bear fruit as we continue to roll it out. So quite a bit, Keith, for agriculture, very promising. I think we've seen where our challenge of trying to scale up, we have seen in different ways now we are achieving greater levels of scale, where we've been said Jamaica is a country of samples, and but people love our agricultural produce, they love the taste, the flavor, but we need to scale up, and we are seeing programs on the way in that. And so in the gastronomy leg of the linkages program with tourism, we are seeing more where our local chefs and the hotels are taking on even greater supplies of local produce in agriculture. So we have a lot to be optimistic about, and as we continue with this overall and greater focus on climate and climate response and building resilience as a country, we are seeing that find its greater way into the agricultural sector, and that's very promising for the country.
I don't know, John, do you want to add anything on this sort of link between agriculture and manufacturing? I know you're probably, whilst you may not be heavily involved in it directly, you are involved in the tea business, and I'm sure you have an idea of what's happening locally in certain of these areas.
Yeah, I don't have the expertise that it seems Dr. Henry has, or that great love for agriculture. But there is certainly a drive and a direction being provided by the government to strengthen the linkage between agriculture and tourism. And of course, there is a strong demand from the manufacturing sector for items that can be grown locally. And we are beginning to see increased production through some of these initiatives that the government has started. And they have some ideas for major growth in terms of exportable products like mangoes and peppers and akis and so on, that are being, the land is being set aside for those things that actually can be exported on their own. But from the manufacturing sector, we are getting more and more items from the local agriculture sector, and that's a good thing. We're beginning to see the agriculture sector people showing more interest in it. Certainly business persons are showing more interest in it, and so on. And we see a reawakening in that area.
Okay, thanks very much, John. I don't know, Wayne, if you want to give us a bit of more of an overview on why you're positive on our outlook going forward. I know that kind of is a prelude to your planned mid-November presentation on our future outlook, but perhaps you can just give us your overview of why you're positive and what you're positive about.
So thank you, Keith. We, as you know, as a country, we've done quite a bit of assessments, formal studies, assessments, and even beyond that, as persons like John Mahfood, practitioners, real players and stakeholders over the years would have the experience to share thoughts of what have been the contributing factors to some of the challenges we've seen in Jamaica. And over time, we've said, well, one was the need for greater macroeconomic stability. We've said the need for greater competitiveness in the business industry. We've seen, the need for, you said the need for more diversification to tackle, crime, different priorities that we've established as a country. And I think over time, we have been making progress in a number of these measures. And sure, we still have a ways to go, but particularly as we look at, initially we use in the context of the Competitiveness Council, the National NCC, we use the rubric of doing business that the World Bank had established, with some 10 indicators of business competitiveness. And we looked at how easy it would be to start a business, the ease of trading across borders, how easy it would be to pay taxes. And we used that framework, and we began to enact and put in place, implement a number of measures that we began to see some significant progress and increases in the ease and speed of doing business, some of the reforms in our taxation system, the stronger macroeconomic framework, reduction of debt, the entrenchment of fiscal discipline. So a lot of and we're saying that's protected for the most part by law, by legislation, which makes it very difficult if you're going to revert to some of those bad practices, if you will, or the bad framework of the past. And so that is part of what we're seeing that would drive some of the optimism. As I said before, a lot of the build out in areas of trying to get better utilization, capacity utilization. We're seeing some refurbishing, modernization in some industries, alumina and mining, quarrying. We are seeing with some partners where we are trying to modernize equipment. We are trying to build out facilities. We are positioned in the country where we still have as a goal to capitalize in our geographic location in terms of logistics, as John spoke about, as the shipping lanes and where Jamaica is located and the advantages that can accrue to us. And we've had a program and programs really to build out, whether it's the deepening of the harbor, whether it's establishing and strengthening our port facilities, many things underway. And again, while you say we know there's where we still have, there's a way to go. I explain it as our agency PIOG as a guardian, if you will, where we monitor and report on the implementation of Vision 2030 or National Development Plan. It's a long-term plan, but we measure it in bite sizes. We have these 3-year medium-term frameworks where we ensure that the plan remains relevant, that the indicators are being monitored and are updated, that the priorities of the government and private sector, as there's that sort of alignment, we are international partners that support us, that their programs are aligned to our national priorities in the context of a Vision 2030. And as we look at growth going forward for the economy in the context of our long-term plan, then we have some things in place that we are pursuing. We say one is pursuing greater macro to build on the macroeconomic stability, that foundation that we've put in place. We think that's very important. We are looking at greater levels of human capital development. We are seeing a program now to build capacity in the public sector with some of the reforms we are seeing in the public sector transformation. Very important that we increase efficiency in the public sector to partner with the private sector as we together move to build forward stronger. We look at some of the build out in infrastructure in Jamaica that has been ongoing. The construction industry had been another industry that had been doing relatively well, even despite the pandemic, because activities had been ongoing in residential and as well as non-residential activities, road works, a lot of the build out there we've seen. So there's reason, Keith, John, for the optimism we are seeing, that a number of things, and we have to keep focus. So as we look at, we need to do more in terms of the build out of the digital economy, but we've seen a lot of partnership around some early shoots and early wins that we've been seeing there in terms of building out of our broadband backbone and the network. So quite a few things, and I think looking forward as we continue to partner, because no one entity, no one hand can clap in Jamaica, we say, as we move together, we remain optimistic as we focus on the headwinds of climate impacts, and we need to continue to build resilience. So there's a lot of things we can say, but we have reason for that optimism, and we continue to see how best we mitigate those areas of downside that would represent downside risk, and to mitigate those as we move forward as a country.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Wayne. I think we'll probably have time for one more round after this question. So John, maybe you can just tell us what you think is the most positive things that you see going on for the future outlook for Jamaica's economy.
I think that, when we started this discussion today, we talked about the investment in the reform, the economic reforms that Jamaica has been on for the past 10 years, that has laid the groundwork and the foundation for where we are now. Since independence in '62, we have had many different experiments with socialism, with capitalism, many isms that did not translate into significant growth in Jamaica, to the point where our debt to equity ratio, the debt to GDP, was very, very high. And so both political parties started on a sustained program of getting that down and stabilizing the economy and fiscal prudence. And so 10 years later, we were able to get through the worst of the COVID. And when you look at the pillars of the economy that we talked about, whether it is tourism, manufacturing, BPO, agriculture, finance, there is a level of optimism, there is a level of efficiency in these organizations, in these sectors, that indicate that we are going to continue that growth path for the foreseeable future. And the country has made the sacrifices to get us here. And I expect for the first time since our independence, we will going to see a gradual increase in the productivity, in the per capita income, and in the sustained economic growth. So it's not one thing, it's a combination of all the things that people have sacrificed to get us to a position where Jamaica will start to grow and become one of the leading economies in the Caribbean.
Maybe, John, you can just expand quickly on that productivity point and also the capital access point from the junior stock market, because I think the two are linked.
I think, again, when you look back at some of the inhibiting factors on the economy, was the drive to, one of the things we faced was a very high interest rate policy in the past that took the interest rates very high and made it difficult to start businesses and to upgrade your businesses. And back in 2010, the authorities started a junior stock exchange, which allowed small and medium-sized businesses to become part of the exchange. And I think it's some 40 odd companies now that are on that exchange. And one of the things we saw, Pete, is that there has been a transformation of the companies on the junior stock exchange that bodes well for the rest of the industries in Jamaica, where the companies have, by the fact of being on the exchange, small and medium-sized family companies transformed the way that they do business, their strategic planning. And we have seen companies that have grown 10, 15-fold in the last 10 years. And my expectation is that there are still a number of companies, maybe 40 or 50. I hope that in another, say, 3 or 4 years, we'll have 100 companies on the junior stock exchange. And what that has done is reduce the reliance on debt, on borrowings, and as I said, transform these companies. So those are things that bode well for the government, for the sector, and for the economy, and have given us confidence that companies that look at their business seriously, even family companies, can grow. And we have seen also in the last 2 years significant money being raised on both the main and the junior stock exchange, which are being put into productive use. And I believe the stock market is going to be one of the key drivers in the future.
Okay, Wayne. Thank you very much, John. That was very informative. Wayne, maybe you can give us sort of, if you have one message or a couple of messages for international investors based on Jamaica's economic situation now, what would that be?
That Jamaica has been open for business. We have been demonstrating now those persons who are evidence-based and sort of results and performance-based. We've demonstrated over the past number of years a commitment to macroeconomic stability and fiscal discipline. As John highlighted, some of our challenges historically had been facilitated, brought about, exacerbated by these, and we've seen the improvements in the Jamaican economy. We have seen that we are on the public sector side, the government side, guiding policy, where policy matters in creating an enabling environment for business and investment. We are moving ahead in accordance with our long-term national goals embedded in our Vision 2030 Jamaica, our National Development Plan, to move Jamaica to become a more technology-enabled society, and we are seeing moves in that direction. We have been ensuring, in keeping with our sustainable development goals that the world has bought into and are aligning their country structures to, that as we are doing and progressing, we are careful to not leave anyone behind. And so we have a robust social protection mechanism that we continue to review. Over the time of the pandemic, we've expanded and strengthened in areas. So we are serious, and we are people-centered, even as we move the country, seek to move the country forward. And I think it's important to say that, because a number of our investors are more socially conscious and not just about money, but social returns. How are people, and what is the effect and the benefit from a you say from a social responsibility standpoint? And so Jamaica has been demonstrating that, and I think that's a key message I'd want to leave. That we are open for business. We have many opportunities opportunities, emerging opportunities in the blue and green economies. We have, a lot on the table in terms of trying to do more with technology and infuse our digitalization agenda. So many opportunities exist for Jamaica, and we are seeing those improvements, as John, the expert here in terms of private sector involvement, can tell you. So we have a ways to go, but we are committed as we work together and as we remain focused and transparent in progressing and building forward stronger.
Okay, John, and the same question for you. If you had one or two key messages for international investors, what would it be? Or what would they be?
Well, I think that it's as Dr. Henry said, it's the environment here is a very positive one, open to investors, open to businesses of various natures. We didn't talk a lot about the green side of it, the solar and wind turbine, wind power, but Jamaica and individual companies are certainly transforming themselves in terms of investment in energy and wind turbines and so on. And the country itself is very open to the investment in the clean economy. And that's an area that I believe that outsiders investors can look at. But it's really the entire atmosphere that exists where everything is open, strong, foreign exchange reserves, balanced economy. It is the type of country where you can invest and look beyond just the domestic market, but as an opportunity to re-export. That would be, for instance, in the BPO sector. So wherever your particular expertise is as an investor, you can come into this market with the confidence that you are looking at an expanding market and one that is open to investors.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think that's probably the time, the 45 minutes that we have. So I'd just like to thank you all. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I think we've given a good overview of what's happening in Jamaica. All right. Thanks very much, John, Wayne, for your presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Hall. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Jamaica Producers Group, and I'm proud to do business in Jamaica. JP is an entirely Jamaican-owned multinational. We do business in two broad areas: logistics and infrastructure on the one hand, and food and drink on the other. And we do business in the Caribbean, in Europe, in the US. So we're a multinational. I got my start in business in the practice of law. I actually was a banking and securities lawyer, kind of a Wall Street lawyer in New York in the late 90s. Went from there, briefly doing a stint as an entrepreneur, doing private equity, raising money globally and investing in the Caribbean. And after that, joined JP, where I've been for 20 years. In a sense, the law, the business of doing deals, and the business of participating in a restructuring of Jamaica has been what I've been doing at JP ever since, and also to some extent on a global scale. So JP is very optimistic about the current business environment. Now, we recognize that these are the times of COVID, and so there are challenges, and we've obviously faced a hit to our GDP, particularly from tourism and to some extent the food service businesses. We believe that Jamaica's structural position is more competitive than it's ever been. The inputs, the cost of capital being the most important one, which allows us to transform what we do, is a place where we're competitive. Our labor costs are increasingly competitive in a relative sense. So all this business about stimulus in the United States and to some extent inflation and wage growth and higher minimum wages means that the work that we do here in Jamaica can be more valuable to that market, which of course is the biggest on earth. But in addition to that, one thing that COVID has taught us is that a lot of the things that used to happen in an office block in the major capitals of the world, New York, Toronto, Chicago, or even the medium-sized cities in the US, they don't have to happen in that office block. A lot of that work can happen right here in Kingston and across Jamaica. And we believe we can participate in that, both at the goods producing level as well as in the services. The markets in this part of the world have realized, in part because of COVID, but also for other reasons, that they don't want their supply chain to be dependent on any one particular region. So all of that, we believe, adds up to a potentially positive story for Jamaica. But Jamaica has to pivot to grab those opportunities. And we believe that we're able to do that as a corporate citizen. We believe our peers are able to do that because we believe that they can now access capital to do it. And so all of that makes us optimistic.
Welcome to the Explore Do Business Jamaica Virtual Investment Conference. I am Audley Shaw, Minister with portfolio responsibility for industry, investment, commerce, agriculture, and fisheries on behalf of the government of Jamaica. It's a pleasure to have both local and international investors here, as over the next day and a half, we discuss why Jamaica is the place of choice to do business and explore the range of investment opportunities available to you here in Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica is not just a great place to do business. It is indeed the business hub of the Caribbean. Jamaica's value proposition as the best regional investment destination is underpinned by our strong economic performance, resilience, strategic location, connectivity, readiness to do business, natural resources, and world-renowned cultural status. We are ranked in the 2020 Doing Business report of the World Bank as the 6th easiest place to start a business, the 12th easiest for getting credit, and the best Caribbean country for doing business. The country also had the top performing stock market globally in 2015 and 2018, as ranked by Bloomberg. Jamaica has an extremely favorable investment climate. Our long-term credit rating and local currency debt are rated B+ by international rating firm Moody's, while our financial institutions are among the most sophisticated across Latin America and the Caribbean. Just recently, we made our central bank totally independent of government and are about to initiate a central bank digital currency. Jamaica's economy has and continues to benefit from the successful implementation of an economic reform program, which resulted prior to the pandemic in entrenched macroeconomic stability, evidenced by relatively low unemployment and single-digit inflation rates, a declining debt to GDP ratio, and 7 consecutive years of economic growth. As it relates to our macroeconomic performance, as measured by growth in real GDP, Jamaica grew by an compounded average growth of 1% per annum for the period 2015 to 19. This is compared with an average growth of 0.76% for the Latin America and the Caribbean region. Despite the pandemic, the economic outlook for the country remains very favorable. We are now in a V-shaped economic recovery with GDP growth of 14.2% in the second quarter of 2021. The IMF estimates GDP growth of 1.5 and 5.7% respectively in 2021 and 2022. As you can see, the economy is picking up pace. Jamaica's location is one of our best natural assets. We are strategically located. The country is the most centrally located island within the Caribbean region. We are in the midst of the main east-west shipping lanes between the Far East, Europe, and Eastern North America. This offers you a distinct advantage of direct access to a nearby market of 300 million people. This proximity to major markets provides transnational corporations with a solid base for their Caribbean operations and allows for nearshore logistics operations as companies seek to shorten their supply chain. The country boasts the most modern port within the Caribbean region, managed by French container transportation and shipping company CMA CGM, and servicing over 12 major shipping lines and 14 KTEUs, 20-foot equivalent units ship handling capacity. Other factors contributing to Jamaica's attractiveness as a destination for foreign investment include the absence of restrictions on foreign investment or the holding, converting, or repatriation of funds from investment. The country also has in place special economic zones, which offer an advantageous tax-efficient location in proximity to our main ports and airports, currently housing over 70 outsourcing and manufacturing companies. At present, our laws do not mandate a lockup period for investments. There are also several bilateral agreements that make doing business in Jamaica easy for foreigners. These include several bilateral tax treaties negotiated with countries such as the United States, Canada, CARICOM, France, and Germany, which aim to avoid double taxation. We are ranked 4th in Latin America and the Caribbean for our public-private partnership program in the InfraScope 2019 index. This is behind only Chile, Colombia, and Peru. Jamaica has a robust PPP institutional framework with strong technical capacity, and the government is committed to privatizing government assets that can be better run by the private sector. The government recognizes the need for private sector participation in domestic investment and efficiency gains associated with divesting certain government-owned enterprises. This has been demonstrated through a number of high-profile divestments over the last few years, including the Wigton Wind Farm IPO listing, the Trans-Jamaica Highway IPO listing, the 30-year concessional divestment of the Kingston Container Terminal, and the concessional divestment of our 2 international airports. We have had 25 successful privatizations spanning the last 11 years from 2009 to 2020, totaling over US $1.7 billion across the energy, tourism, logistics, agriculture, and transport sectors. Many of you will be aware of our world-class tourism product, which has earned us many accolades. The country is a leader in the tourism industry globally. 1.3 million visitors relative to 11 million across the Caribbean in 2020. Before COVID, our tourism industry was welcoming 4.3 million tourists annually. We boast a robust telecommunications infrastructure with built-in redundancy and high-speed connectivity, both mobile and fixed, and a modern road network. Last but not least, we are the sprint factory of the world. Jamaica is home to the fastest man and woman alive. Jamaica's reputation as one of the premier global destinations for investment continues to rise as discerning entrepreneurs increasingly seek to capitalize on the exciting business opportunities that abound in our country. Our welcoming environment has already attracted over 200 multinational companies in sectors as diverse as cement, airports, ports, food processing, beverages, finance, banking, tourism, insurance, and outsourcing. Add to that our homegrown multinationals such as Sandals, Grace Kennedy, and Jamaica Producers, and you can appreciate that Jamaica's business footprint goes way beyond what you might expect. New opportunities have been packaged across targeted sectors, including agriculture, logistics, manufacturing, tourism, renewable energy, infrastructure, creative industries, and outsourcing global digital services. Despite COVID, we can boast a robust pipeline of over $1 billion of investment, indeed a V-shaped recovery. The portfolio of real investment projects open for investment across these sectors will be showcased by JAMPRO during the conference. And we encourage you to get involved in the diverse, dynamic economy with a promising growth outlook that is Jamaica. We are excited that you have joined us for this conference. Jamaica is ready to connect with you and do business. Let's move ahead together.
Hello and welcome to the Do Business Jamaica Investment Virtual Conference 2021. I'm the moderator, Al Edwards, and today we'll be looking at Jamaica's, I'll start again. Hello and welcome to the Do Business Jamaica Investment Virtual Conference 2021. I'm your moderator, Al Edwards. Jamaica's stature has been growing as a place to do business in the Caribbean, and that has been underpinned by actively encouraging investors to its shores, abiding by the rule of law, a robust and equitable regulatory framework, diverse economic activity, of compliance, and a workforce willing and able to provide productivity to enterprises. This session focuses on Jamaica, business hub of the Caribbean, and participating in this discussion is Dr. Norman Dunn, Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, and Mr. Brian Booth, Senior General Manager, Corporate and Commercial Banking, Collections and Group Underwriting Division, NCB. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Let's start with you, Dr. Dunn. What current efforts attract more investors to Jamaica, and can you elaborate on the role that plays in its economic strategy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards, and welcome also to the Do Business Jamaica Virtual Investment Conference. We really hope that the participants who are able to join us will see the wealth of knowledge and the wealth of information that is available on this wonderful and beautiful country we call Jamaica. Now, in answering your question, the government is keen in its growth and developments of the economy and has developed a number of national strategies that will help us in our long-term objectives. These strategies include the National 4-Year Agribusiness Strategy, which aims to develop a profitable agribusiness sector in Jamaica. The aim, of course, is to transition Jamaica from a low-tech, small business type agri practices to a high-tech, low-cost, large-scale farming operations in order to get the best out of these economies of scale. We have what is also called the National 5-Year Manufacturing Strategy, and this intends to capitalize and to catalyze the manufacturing sector to form a greater and be a part of a greater contributor to the national economic growth of Jamaica. This strategy, of course, is geared towards growing the contribution of this sector to about $81 billion by 2025. We also have what is called the Global Digital Strategy. And here the government seeks to attract and deliver high value services. This is changing our current contributor within these services from an 80-20 mix to a 60-40 mix, meaning that from a low value to a high value service sector, and this in relationship to our business outsourcing, our BPO sector. What we aim to do with this strategy is to increase our employment status to achieve about 70,000 persons from its current state of almost 50,000. Also, Jamaica has launched recently a request for application of approved integrated resort development status. And what this is our first step towards establishing Jamaica's casino gaming industry. And what we want to do is that this will allow casino gaming to be done in the context of a multi-pronged investment that and range of services that we are bringing to the tourism sector And this is going to be an exciting development that we are looking forward to. We hope to see our first sets of application coming in by February 2022. So there's a number of strategies that we have in fact put in place to achieve the various different objectives that we have set about as what we want to achieve for Jamaica. It's a great place for investment, a great place for business activity, and we're encouraging all those who are participating now to look keenly at Jamaica as we have developed all these strategies to ensure a successful investment opportunity environment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Dunn. Jamaica has a number of key strengths as a hub. Its geographic location between North and South America, its proximity to the largest economy in the world, its diversity, it has tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, entertainment, great brand recognition. How can Jamaica capitalize on these positives? Mr. Booth, perhaps you can answer that, and then we'll hear from Dr. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. And I'd just like to add my own welcome to all the participants to this year's Do Business Jamaica Virtual Investment Conference. Certainly, we hope that this will prove to be quite beneficial for all the participants. As you rightly pointed out, Jamaica is ideally positioned to capitalize on many of the investment opportunities that are available within the region. So when we look at our positioning, it allows us to have significant flights, direct flights to Jamaica. It was recently announced that we now will have 16 weekly flights directly from the UK alone. So if we are thinking about investors from the UK or from Europe, that travel will be easier, very easy for persons coming into Jamaica. Then, of course, from the United States and Canada, we have numerous flights on a weekly basis and many flights directly from Central America as well. So ease of access into and out of the country is facilitated by virtue of the many flights that we have. Our proximity to the North American and Canadian and Central American markets also is a distinct advantage that Jamaica has. It means, therefore, that a business person could hop on a flight from New York, be in Jamaica in time for a morning meeting, and later in the afternoon be off at the golf course on the North Coast relaxing. So we are in a very good position geographically. And then, of course, when you think about global trade and the shipping routes, we are directly on that transatlantic shipping route across from Europe into North America and Central America. So the movements of goods and services globally is facilitated by our companies that operate in the logistics and the shipping sectors. And given the number of ships that transit through our local ports, it makes it a lot easier for investors to have their supplies moving in on a consistent basis. And we know that this is one of the concerns that many investors would have seen bottlenecks in supply, and to have consistency of shipping, I think is something that puts Jamaica in an ideal position to benefit from various investment opportunities. As well, we happen to be a stable democracy, so that there are smooth transitionings on a timely basis, on a regular 5-year basis. We have our elections, and those have been pretty smooth. Thankfully, there are no kidnappings. There's nothing like that that investors have to worry about when they do business in Jamaica. And so I believe that these are some factors that speaks to the fact that Jamaica is an ideal location. And of course, we are English speaking. We have a very competitive labor force. And so that puts us ahead of many of the other territories within the region.
Dr. Dunn?
Well, Mr. Bowe has really said it. almost all, but I'd just like to add, apart from our geography, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
we are, sorry, I think you lost me for a minute. So in addition to what Mr. Booth has said, which he has said quite a bit, and I concur with all that he has said, Jamaica has I believe another distinctive feature is that east corridor between the movement of shipping lane and in as far as the Panama Canal is concerned. We have one of the best ports in this Western Hemisphere. We also have, without a doubt, the best port in the Caribbean, and therefore it serves well for transshipment purposes. But one of the things which we have is our weather. Our weather is good. So you can be in Jamaica, you don't have to worry about a tornado. You don't have to worry about the coldness of time. We have a perfect weather here almost all year round, apart from our rainy season, in which we have some rains and of course we have some tropical cyclones. But these are some of the things that we have going for us as Jamaica. Plus, we have a trainable workforce. We are adaptable. We are one of the most adaptable countries that you can imagine. You set us a target and we're able to adapt well. So we are trainable, and as such, our investors can be assured that the knowledge transfer can be very quickly passed to our Jamaican workers, and therefore gives you a greater leverage in terms of your cost structure, and having the best quality of workers in your establishment. Of course, apart from our stable democracy, our government is business friendly. So we are investor friendly, we are business friendly. We seek investors and we share your investment dreams and opportunities, and we will work in the best possible way to ensure that we bridge whatever gap is necessary for your investment to be successful. We have a robust foreign exchange situation. We have no limits on foreign exchange movement. We have no limits in repatriation of profit. And therefore, we have a great opportunity for you to invest and to put your money where you believe that you will get a guaranteed rate of return. And also, when it's time comes for you to, if you want to repatriate your profit, then you're able to do that. So welcome. And this is a great opportunity, we believe, that Jamaica offers to you as our investors.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Dunn. Mr. Booth, over the last 20 years, NCB has become a leading financial player in Jamaica. And this is all the more remarkable given that it is an indigenous bank. Let me put a scenario to you. I'm a foreign investor looking to set up a business in Jamaica, and I need help with financing and an institution that can assist with navigating essential transactions. What can NCB do to help me?
Interesting scenario, Mr. Edwards. As one of the systemically important financial institutions in Jamaica, NCB offers a broad range of services to meet the needs of the most discerning business and personal customers. So for investors looking to do business in Jamaica, they can have the confidence that in dealing with NCB, they are dealing with a very solid financial institution. Our group boasts a balance sheet of $1.9 trillion. So that speaks to the size and the strength of the institution. We are an indigenous institution, but we also operate across the region. We are in Barbados through NCB Capital Markets. We are also in Cayman and Trinidad. We also have Clarion, which focuses on wealth management in Bermuda. We also have our UK representative office that provides services to our clients in that region. And then, of course, we have our Guardian Group, which focuses on insurance, both general and personal insurance. And Guardian operates in excess of 20 countries across the region. So in addition to providing the basic financial services that any business would require, NCB as a facilitator of B2B transactions in this instance can provide a plethora of other services. The fact is, in Jamaica, we have a fairly well-developed capital market, and NCB is able to provide not only the typical operating accounts, but we can provide debt financing. If equity is required, we can arrange that through our NCB capital markets. We can arrange bond financing. We can arrange mezz financing as well. And for those companies who are thinking about going on the stock market by way of IPOs, we are ideally positioned to provide those services. In addition, NCB has excellent correspondent banking relationships globally. And to that extent, therefore, we are able to facilitate global transaction to our business customers. NCB has also embarked on a program of digitizing our business. In fact, we see the future as being digital in terms of allowing customers the speed that they want. Digital allows us to be scalable, it allows us to be flexible, and it allows us also to offer the level of customer experience that we know that investors will require. And so we have invested fairly heavily and continue to invest in our digital aspect of our business so that we are in a position to truly empower businesses to succeed. As you know, success occurs when opportunity meets preparedness. And so whereas JAMPRO is showcasing the various opportunities that are available in Jamaica for investors, NCB, for its part, is empowering investors. We are empowering investors to be able to take advantage of these opportunities so that they can reap massive success. So I would say to all investors who are contemplating doing business in Jamaica that NCB offers that one-stop solution, whether it's in banking, whether it's in insurance, whether through the capital markets, whether through global transaction, we have it in one package, in one location.
Thank you very much. There has been a call for more joint ventures and private-public partnerships. How best can this be facilitated? Dr. Dunn, you first, then Mr. Booth.
Thank you very much. As a country, we're always looking for great partners, and therefore our PPP program has been extremely successful over the last years. Between 2009 and 2020, we have had about 25 successful privatization. We actually have a specialized PPP unit or agency comprised of a Development Bank of Jamaica with adequate technical staff that reports directly to the Cabinet of Jamaica Privatization Committee. And this includes, of course, the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, and other ministers. The agencies identifies the projects that supports the ministries, and we make the best case for these projects. And of course, once they fall on the remit of the Cabinet. What have we done so far? We have done some very notable successes, include the Norman Manley International Airport privatization. This is our major airport in our capital city, Kingston. We have also privatized the Sangster International Airport, which is our major airport in the west of the island that deals with a lot of tourism, and we have hundreds of flights that services our tourism sector in Montego Bay. We also have privatized the Kingston Container Terminal, that is our major shipping and logistics point here in Jamaica. And we did the South Coast Highway as well as Highway 2000, which is a Jamaica highway in Jamaica to the tune of about $1.7 billion in investment. Our areas, of course, other areas include tourism, logistics, agriculture, transport sector, and we look forward to greater opportunities to share and to participate with other investors in our robust and strong PPP program.
Thank you. Mr. Booth?
So as Dr. Dunn would have rightly pointed out, a number of such ventures would have taken place, and NCB, for its part, stands ready to support investors who want to participate in these ventures with the government. One of these ventures about which the minister spoke is the privatization of Trans-Jamaica. That was certainly one of the largest such ventures undertaken in recent times in Jamaica. NCB played a pivotal role in that transaction, both the corporate banking arm of National Commercial Bank as well as NCB Capital Markets. In that scenario, we brought together a unique financing structure of debt as well as doing the IPO to make ownership, Jamaican ownership, possible. So certainly we were very happy to be a part of that. We have also participated by way of providing debt financing through our corporate banking arm for construction of residences on the university campus. And so we stand ready to support any business that wants to collaborate with the government in that way. And as I would have mentioned earlier, we can provide a range of financing to meet any needs, whether this is debt, whether it's equity, it's bond, or other structures or a combination thereof. And of course, through Guardian, we are able to provide adequate insurance coverage for the various projects that may be undertaken. So we are ready, we stand ready to provide that support to investors to collaborate with the government in making Jamaica the place to live and to do business.
Thank you very much. In recent years, JAMPRO has upped the ante on facilitating investment in the country and has won plaudits for this. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Andrew Holness made mention of the part JAMPRO played in bringing the Inca Cygnus venture to fruition. Once JAMPRO has brought the ingredients to the table, how best can the government bake the cake? Dr. Dunn.
Well, I can say, I'm so proud to not only be a Jamaican, but to have an organization like JAMPRO. JAMPRO continues to distinguish itself as our premier agency that brings individuals, investors together so they can see the true value of investment in Jamaica. And I'm so proud of this agency headed by our president, Ms. Edwards. Of course, through our Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, the government has been very supportive. And we have seen where JAMPRO has landed a number of projects that the Jamaican government leveraged its suite of investment opportunities to attract these investors to Jamaica. These investments are deeply entrenched in our legislation, and it gives the investor the peace of mind that they require for investment in Jamaica. And I'll just mention a few here. For example, our omnibus incentive regime that deals with custom tariff resolution is geared towards our productive sector, and it provides duty-free importation of capital, equipment, raw material, and other things, other productive incentives that brings together what we call a production or productive incentive relief scheme. And this allows for companies in the manufacturing, tourism, and other sectors to benefit from these tax reliefs. There's also access to reduced corporate income tax and tax reliefs from establishing their headquarters here in Jamaica. We have also what is called the Urban Renewal Act that provides relief from income tax, stamp duty, and transfer taxes to aid in the development that will be undertaken in some of our specialized development areas. We also have what is now known as the Special Economic Zone, or the SEZ, and this is approved where developers enjoy a range of incentives that will make their investment, really take off and develop to the strongest potential here in Jamaica. So there's a number of things that government has in fact put in place to ensure that these investors sees Jamaica as the best place. And JAMPRO has a distinction of placing the right investor to the right market. And the market here is Jamaica, with a slew of incentives that will make the investment very worthwhile here in Jamaica. So kudos to JAMPRO. And we say continue doing the great work that you're doing, because it has borne so much fruit, and one which we are so proud of. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Dunn. According to Trading Economies and the Bank of Jamaica, foreign direct investment in Jamaica averaged US 166.31 million from 2012 until 2020. These are averages, reaching an all-time high of 274 million in the third quarter of 2015. It's now below 100 million, but that can possibly be put down to the impact of the COVID pandemic. What must be done to pick up foreign direct investment in Jamaica, Dr. Dunn?
Well, I mean, your last statement is in fact true. Before the pandemic, and you did mention the statistics. I mean, we have in fact attracted quite a bit of foreign exchange and investors to Jamaica with foreign exchange earning capacity. The pandemic has really dealt us a blow, as it has done with many parts of the world. But the thing about it, Mr. Edwards, with us in Jamaica, while the pandemic has done a terrible effect on a number of our strong pathways that we were on, we also see the pandemic as opportunities. And therefore, this is one of the reasons why we're having this conference here, this virtual do business investment conference. This is one way we're pivoted to ensure that persons know about Jamaica and what is it that we're still doing. And what we're saying to them is that Jamaica is open for business. There's a number of opportunities and projects that we want to welcome you in. These include agriculture, manufacturing, infrastructure, energy, creative industries, just to name a few. And there's a number of investment options that we have to common stream that we want to bring our investors to. Here is a great opportunity for us to showcase our services and what is it that we are offering as a country. We're not going to allow the pandemic to keep us. We believe that is a great opportunity, and we are saying to you, come to Jamaica. We are here for you. An investment climate here is ripe for you despite the pandemic. But as you would have seen from the discussion, both from Mr. Booth and myself, we are here and we are geared to making your investment worthwhile. Come to Jamaica. The investment awaits you.
Mr. Booth, NCB has stood out as a successful enterprise and an investment that has borne fruit. At one time, it contemplated listing on the New York Stock Exchange as the most successful bank in Jamaica. How do we get more NCBs, and explain why NCB remains confident in Jamaica?
So our focus, Mr. Edwards, really is around empowering people, empowering businesses and empowering individuals for success. And we see, whilst Jamaica is our home base, we see the region as our target market. And to that extent, therefore, we would have taken steps to expand across the region. And we would have acquired recently controlling interest in the Guardian Group. So this sets the stage for us to be able to expand across the region to become the region's preeminent financial institution. So NCB is constantly looking for opportunities to expand and to develop. And to the extent that economies grow, and to the extent that we have conferences such as this one that can showcase the benefits of investing and doing business in Jamaica and create economic growth, then NCB will be there to support the growth, whether that growth is in Jamaica, whether that growth is in some other part of the territory. So we are constantly looking for opportunities to be able to grow. And digital is at the forefront of that growth, because we feel with digital platforms, we are able to scale, we are able to provide the kind of service that our customers have come to expect. And we will be able to continue doing so at the speed at which companies expect. And so as we look to the future, we are very confident. We are very confident about Jamaica and its prospects for growth. In fact, in the second quarter of 2021, Statin indicated that the economy increased by 14.2%. And this is to be contrasted with an 18.4% decline in economic activity during the second quarter of 2020, when the pandemic really was having a very dramatic impact on the economy. So already we are seeing signs of growth in the economy. We have played a part in that growth as well, in terms of facilitating the construction of various complexes for the business process outsourcing sector. We continue to provide financing to investors who are interested in the tourism sector. For example, in that sector, we have close to 30 billion of funding in the pipeline for the tourism sector at this juncture. NCB also will continue to facilitate e-commerce through our e-commerce platform. And you would be interested to know that since the pandemic started in March 2020, NCB has facilitated over $100 billion in digital sales through our e-commerce platform. So we continue to expand in that way to facilitate the changing needs and requirements of businesses. Certainly the pandemic has had a negative impact, but what it has certainly done is that it has created a number of opportunities, and those institutions that are well poised to capitalize on those opportunities are the ones that will continue to grow. NCB would have started its digital labs a number of years ago, so that gave us a head start in terms of our digital program. When you look across the local landscape, 2/3 of our branches today are digital branches with 24/7 bank on the go operational areas. Well, subject to the curfew, which limits us to 5 to 8 p.m., 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. currently, but certainly our customers have access, and they have access to our online banking platforms as well, 24/7. So in these ways, we feel that the future is bright. We feel that digital is the way forward, and we continue to make investments in our branches, in our location, and in technology in particular, to facilitate the changing needs of our business and personal customers alike.
Okay. Dr. Dunn, can you outline policies that are currently in train and those in the pipeline that will make it easier to do business in Jamaica?
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to say that to enable Jamaica to continue to be the leading investment destination, we have developed and will be approved by Cabinet shortly. It is what we call a national investment policy. And what this policy is that it will create a more transparent business environment, reinforcing Jamaica government's commitment to our investors. And this will change the landscape for both foreign and local investment as they move through all the roadblocks that may be, and create a more cohesive approach to investment. What we want to ensure is that investors are able to make positive contribution to the growth and development of Jamaica. And of course, two critical areas in this from the NIP are, of course, one, the Jamaica Economic Residency Program, and a priority project development designation, which will significantly impact the country's ability to attract and expedite high impact investment, both intended to deepen at the ease of which investors do businesses with Jamaica. of course, along with that, we have developed, and it will complement the NIP. It's called the National Business Portal. And what this does, Mr. Edwards, it's create a one-stop shop for prospective investors. In the first place, and in the first phase, they could establish. The portal is now completed and can be seen at our website called www.dobusiness.gov.ja for you to see what is it that we're proposing and what is it that we are trying to create to make your business sojourn in Jamaica to be one that is seamless. We're saying to you that this is a great opportunity. And just to pick up on something that Mr. Booth said earlier, I just want to add to it. In the pandemic here, we have managed this pandemic very, very well. We have created resilient corridors for our visitors to Jamaica. We have created protocols, strong protocols that are observed by individuals and inhabitants and citizens of Jamaica and our visitors alike to make them safe. We have offered in this pandemic a safe environment for you to invest. We're saying to you that apart from all the other things that make Jamaica a great place to invest, I mean, we're still in the pandemic, and we want to assure you that once you have invested in Jamaica, we will help you to create and craft a pathway that your business can succeed even in the pandemic. So that when the pandemic eases, then your business will be far ahead of the curve in terms of what is it that you have in fact invested in Jamaica. So there's a number of things that we have put in place to ensure that it makes it easier for you to do business in Jamaica, even in a pandemic.
Thank you. Mr. Booth, what is NCB doing as it pertains to backing and financing alternative energy businesses? This is likely to become a major sector of the economy in future years.
I agree. And certainly when we think about the impact on global warming from the use of traditional fuels, it really points to the need for us to look at alternative energy as the main source of energy. Recently, NCB launched a program that will see customers benefiting from a special package to fund motor vehicles that use clean energy. We have also collaborated with other partners, the USAID in particular, to provide funding to SMEs who are involved with green energy. So we have our programs in-house, and we will be seeking to expand those programs to make them more available to our customers to benefit from modernizing their businesses and also using clean energy as their principal source of energy generation. So we continue to look at our policies, to refine our policies, to put programs in place that will facilitate that transition, which is vital to the future prosperity, not only of Jamaica, but certainly of the region and globally as a whole.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your participation in this very important presentation. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hiroshi Tachigami, General Manager of Marubeni, being responsible for this region. I would like to say thank you very much for your giving this opportunity to speak about Marubeni and our vision. I firstly mentioned the long-standing relationship between our two countries, Jamaica and Japan. The relationship between Jamaica and Japan began more than 50 years ago, 50 years. Before officially a relationship was established, one Japanese company started importing Blue Mountain coffee from Jamaica, and the coffee brewed the Jamaica-Japan relationship. In Japan, Jamaica is very, very popular for its reggae music, Usain Bolt, and its track and field athlete, and of course, its coffee. Yes, recently we had the Olympic Games in Tokyo, and we saw the great performance of Jamaican athletes, especially for track and field. I also saw a heartwarming story between Mr. Hansel Parchment, gold medalist 110 meters hurdles, and the Japanese girl. The Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs visited Jamaica in last July. The Japanese government sees Jamaica as a leader of Caribbean countries in many ways, so consider the relationship is important. I believe the relationship between Jamaica and Japan is getting better and better. Please allow me to provide a brief introduction of Marubeni Corporation. Marubeni is one of major Japanese integrated trading and investment conglomerate that has been in business for over 160 years. We provide products and services in broad range of business activities across wide range fields. These include food, consumer products, chemicals, energy, power plants, transportation, industrial machineries, and so on. We operate through 136 branches, 310 subsidiaries, and 146 affiliated companies across more than 70 countries in the world. As a general manager in the power business and infrastructure group, I'm responsible for all power activities in the Americas, including Jamaica and the Caribbean region, and Europe and Oceania. Now, I would like to a little bit elaborate more about our power business. In the power generation business, we deliver safe and stable supply of power by taking lead role throughout the entirety of project in which it participates. From development to construction, and finally to operation and maintenance, we, Marubeni, leverage its industry expertise, knowledge, and experience in EPC and project finance, fully supported by worldwide network of strongholds for project development and asset management. We have built an optimum IPP and IWPP asset portfolio in a diverse range of regions of the world, which provides a stable power with its safety operation. Internationally, we own 38,000 megawatts and is one of the largest international power producers in the world. The majority of our assets are coming from Asia and Europe and the Americas forwards. Currently, natural gas and LNG are mainly used for our asset. But in addition to that, we are increasing our renewable energy, including solar, wind, geothermal, and hydro, which are currently more than 10% of our portfolio. We, Marubeni, recognize that the climate change is a global issue that affects both environmental and social sustainability. In accordance with the Marubeni Group sustainability management policy and recognizing the importance of the counter-reacting the effects of climate change, Marubeni will reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from its power generation portfolio by both cutting coal-fired power generation capacity in half, and she's entering into any new coal-fired power generation business. Furthermore, we will expand our renewable energy generation business and deploy innovative technology to increase the efficiency of its portfolio asset and reduce our portfolio's environmental footprint. In this global development and challenge, Marubeni entered into Jamaica power market in 2007. It's 14 years ago, through the 80% investment into Jamaica Public Services Company, which is, as you know, is the sole utility company that was established in 1970. In 2011, we invited East West Power Company from Korea as our partners. Currently, we are managing Jamaica Public Service Company together with East West Power and also a Jamaican government. Last 14 years since we made this investment, we continue to put our best effort to deliver safe and stable electricity to Jamaican people and industry for the sustainable development of Jamaica. In order to achieve this commitment, we have additionally invested in the replacement of power plant in Old Harbor. We built 190 megawatt gas combined cycle power plant with modern technology and started its operation from 2019, 2 years ago. This power plant, called South Jamaica Power Center, is most efficient power plant in Jamaica using LNG and contributing energy diversion of this beautiful island. Furthermore, at Hunts Bay, we have installed the largest energy storage facility in the Caribbean to support more renewable energy in this beautiful island. We believe it is important to develop and install clean, reliable power for Jamaica to sustain its beautiful in Jamaica. Also, through Jamaica Public Services, we have been spending considerable resources to address a national problem in Jamaica, which is electricity theft. As you might know, approximately 20% of the power is stolen in this country. JPS, Jamaica Public Services, has been installing smart meter to track electricity theft. In addition to such technical solutions, we are using socio-economic interventions such as support the improvement of the education to the certain communities. However, this is a very complex problem in Jamaica that requires many different solutions, including government interventions. As said, we have been facing a number of challenges. While JPS, Jamaica Public Services, is a regulated power company who is committed to supply stable electricity power to the island. It has been sometimes difficult for us to achieve such commitment due to the gap between the policy and the physical actual situation in Jamaica, such as system loss percentage driven by higher rate of electricity theft. But we have, through Jamaican Public Services, been in close contact with Jamaica government and asked appropriate support to overcome such difficulties. And we appreciate such collaboration from the government, really, and in the future too. We do believe that transparent support from government is quite important to attract over investors coming to Jamaica from all over the world. As said earlier, we, Marubeni, have various power assets around the world. JPS is, of course, one of the most important assets in our portfolio. It is a vertically integrated utility type of business that we currently jointly own with a Korean partner and the Jamaican government. Through our experience in JPS operation, we learn what the utility company's challenges are. For example, expanding renewable energy, operating stable grid, and so on. We plan to utilize this knowledge to expand our utility business activities around the world from Jamaica. Besides power business, we also see a number of the potential opportunities in other business in Jamaica, in the Caribbean. As I said, Marubeni is not only for the power company. Marubeni is a conglomerate of the with experience in many different type of business. We are exploring any potential investment opportunities. For example, EV, electric vehicles, IT finance solutions, and so on in Jamaica. Through these activities, we would like to contribute to Jamaica's continued development. Also, we have a keen interest in Jamaica's challenge to be a logistic hub through the development of a special economic zone. In other countries, Marubeni has been also supporting technological advancement such as smart city. So we think we can be a very valuable investment partner in Jamaica's progressive future through Marubeni's worldwide know-how. At the end, thank you very much for this opportunity. Through JPS, Jamaica Public Services Operation, and any other business, Marubeni would endeavor to contribute to Jamaica in this particular hard time that the world nation is experiencing in this COVID situation. We are very happy to continue to be an investment partner for JPS development and further investment with Jampro and Jamaica as a country. So I trust I have helped you understand our view of Japan and Jamaica's relationship, who Marubeni is, and our interest in the long-term investment in Jamaica. Let me end by showing a short video of Marubeni's journey building a better world tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Marubeni has been thinking about sustainability. In this age of convenience and optimization, we are overwhelmed by abundance. This material wealth may already be taking its toll on the future. Should we be content with the status quo? Is it even sustainable? Behind the scenes of our advanced world reside myriad problems that grow deeper by the day. Marubeni's mission is to quickly identify these problems, anticipate the future, and provide solutions. For instance, by establishing afforestation businesses that create jobs in tree-growing regions, we help create a sustainable afforestation industry in developing countries. Using textile recycling technology, we avoid wasting old clothes by reviving them as materials. Through small-scale hydropower development, we deliver environmentally friendly electricity. With the digital transformation, we develop sustainable agriculture with more production efficiency that satisfies increasing food demand. Marubeni is on a mission to confront the world's problems head-on, together, and create new business models. This is Marubeni's innovation journey. Our journey, building a better tomorrow, to create a society that is good for all. Join us on our path to the future. The Marubeni Group.